Welcome to So What's It Actually About? I'm your host, Margie Mchechny, and I, along with my wide array of guests, hope to help you better understand and weather the wonderful world of actuarial science. Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. We are joined by Barry. Thank you so much for being here, Barry.
Absolute pleasure, Margaret. Thanks for having me.
Let's position our discussion today. Can you tell us sort of what your role is as an actuary at the moment, and then we'll unpack your background, why you chose actuarial science, etc.
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, I run a firm called Insight. I'm Group CEO of Insight. We have a couple of divisions, about 100 people altogether, mostly actuarial people, plus some data scientists and data engineers, plus some clinical people and other professionals. But the roots of the firm are actuarial and healthcare. We've grown and diversified a little since then.
Sure. So I really want to unpack sort of the ethos and what you stand for as a company. But can we backtrack to your studies and why you chose actuarial science?
Yeah. So I grew up in Johannesburg on the West Strand in a school. People would tell me, would ordinarily produce artisans like plumbers and electricians. But, it's an old school Model C kind of school. And didn't know anything about actuarial science. Happened to be good at math and not much else. And didn't really know what I wanted to do after school. Gap year wasn't really an option, and so I went to varsity and did a very general BSc. I did like maths, physics, chemistry, biology. So it's just basically a continuation of school.
Okay.
To try to open up, options. And there, met and interacted with people from the medical side of things, the science side of things, the math side of things, and some of that was the actuarial and stats side. Mm-hmm. It was almost just like sliding into that kind of coursework. So my degree was a little bit out of kilt. I was doing second year math and first year actuarial science, but it appealed to me, the financial maths particularly. And studied at Wits and stayed there to do honors. Mm-hmm. And then started work. I came out with a few exemptions, not maxing out or anything like that. And then did a year of pensions, which I didn't enjoy.
Okay.
And then got into healthcare.
Okay.
Very early on. Mm-hmm. Quite early in sort of the weird and wonderful world of healthcare in South Africa, which is quite bespoke internationally. I've loved that ever since. So I've been in healthcare since 2000 in a couple of different roles. Previously at Liberty Health. Okay. And then I guess that was only for about 2 years. And then my real formative years were at Discovery Health. Okay. For about 6 years. And then in 2007 I left to, try to spread my own wings and do my own thing.
Is it?
I just started consulting on my own as an individual. Mm-hmm. I did that for a few years. And then crossed paths with Christoph Roth, who at the time was running a company called the Health Monitor Company, which was also an actuarial-focused healthcare company, healthcare-focused actuarial company. And we did some work together. Mm-hmm. I had some specialized expertise coming out of Discovery that really wasn't available in the market. So we started doing some work together. And after about 3 years of sort of walking alongside each other, decided about 10 years ago just to merge everything together. So This is Insight's 10-year anniversary, actually.
Sure, congratulations.
Yeah, very exciting. So we merged the firms, rebranded, and ran up until quite recently, up until a few months ago, ran the whole thing as joint CEOs. Okay. Which, people had a lot of questions about how does it work,
yes.
But actually it was wonderful because it's very useful to have a peer to bounce decisions off and to sort of, make decisions together. Mm. Really like a partnership. Over the last 5 or 6 years in particular, I've been pushing really hard for growth and diversification. I realized, we had a good set of ingredients, really strong technical capabilities. Mm-hmm. And we became quite market dominant in the field, in technical actuarial work in healthcare. Mm-hmm. Then just started to look for and identify opportunities for growth and diversification in a couple of other areas. We opened an Australian office, which is sort of got 3 people there now with lots of exciting work going on. About 2-3 years ago, diversified into life insurance consulting. So now we have about 20 of our people are life actuarial people.
Sure.
About 2 years ago, started a clinical division to complement the health actuarial. So we've got about 3 or 4 doctors, 2 or 3 pharmacists, and some clinical coders.
And can you speak to why that's important to have that sort of multidisciplinary input into the healthcare space?
I mean, it's not strictly speaking necessary for the pure actuarial work. So, the pure actuarial work in healthcare, the sort of product design, pricing, IBNR, monthly reporting, experience analysis, you don't really need clinicians for that. But our services extend quite far beyond that. I mean, that probably makes up half of our actuarial work. The other half is, much deeper understanding of what's going on in the healthcare system, what's driving burdens of disease, what's driving claims experience. Why are healthcare providers behaving the way they are? Why are medical scheme members behaving the way they are? What kind of incentives, co-payments, clinical protocols, health technology assessments? It's a very long list. So I would say there's as much clinical work to do as there is actuarial work, or more. And that expertise typically resides in the managed care organizations, but doesn't really reside at any kind of scale or capacity in any independent fashion. And we see that there is a role for that and a place for that in the market. So that team is already about 10 people.
Sure.
The constraint is how fast we can employ people, actually, because there really is a lot of work, without getting a speed wobble. One of the things I've learned over the years is you can also grow too fast. So and then you sort of you get a speed wobble. So that's sort of the second most recent innovation and area for growth, and then most recently. We have decided to get into the employer advisory space for healthcare benefits, so the sort of the brokerage space, for lack of a better word, because we realised we're giving all of this advice to every other stakeholder in the healthcare system, but not employers or their employees in terms of how to navigate those complex choices, which medical aid, which option. Our medical aid hasn't paid my prescribed minimum benefit properly. And you need quite a lot of agency to, deal with those complexities. I mean, unfortunately, it's a complex environment. And so we just now, we're just hitting the road now to sort of take that service to market with all of our broader expertise and whatnot. I think we have some differentiators to take to the market. It's a bit complacent from what I can see. So we see some opportunity there. All of that keeps me quite busy.
Sure, definitely. Sounds like it. Something that you said is you talked about these different stakeholders that you're engaging with, and I would like you to speak to that a bit more. Are they mainly corporates? Are they mainly, is there a bit of government sort of interaction there? Because healthcare is obviously a much broader issue.
It's a very socially orientated field of practice. So yes, there is some government. I mean, the public health sector is very difficult to penetrate in terms of doing any kind of technical work for a variety of reasons. It's weird, sort of frowning upon working with any for-profit company. So, the government tends to work a lot with academic institutions and non-profits. For whatever reason, and they believe that, they get better value, which is, of course, entirely false, but that's the sort of premise. So that takes a lot of relationship building over a long period of time to get past that, those kind of barriers. Actuaries in particular sort of are boxed into, insurance. And so, I sort of looked at it a bit strangely. What are you doing here? Like you guys work with insurance and medical aid, you don't do public health work. So you're seen as sort of separate from health economists and academics, that work in those fields. So the one remedy there is to also clinical people are able to cross that boundary easier. And clinical people often will, if they don't want to see patients, they'll often complement their credentials with an MPH or
Yes.
something like that. So we find that's another reason for having the clinical people on board, because they can open some doors that it's more difficult for actuaries to open. But also some of the actuaries here, I mean, I've done a postgrad diploma in health economics. I've got a couple of people doing MPHs,
Sure.
just because it's a nice complement. And then there is that extra credential that gives you some kind of extra legitimacy when you're engaging public health people. The main challenge, however, is there just isn't good data. So for actuaries in general, you can talk about policy stuff and various other things, but there isn't the kind of data we see in the private sector. And so the kind of work you could do technically is fairly limited.
Yeah. Is that just because there's a non-collection?
I mean, there's not been an investment in systems and data collection forever.
Okay.
You know, so, I mean, there are pockets of excellence there. I've seen some really interesting work on shoestring budgets, although they take a long while. But there are some pockets of excellence where there's interesting work going on. Of course, the big question is whether NHI can accelerate any of that work.
Yes.
And so one of the projects I'm working on now is to help the NHI group think about the reforms they need for hospital reimbursement.
Okay.
Moving from global budgets to what's called a DRG-based payment system, which, I mean, the work is to plot the roadmap because they don't have the data, the capabilities, the clinical coding, the financial data isn't structured the way it needs to be, etc. So, I mean, it's really just giving them a roadmap for how to get there.
Yes.
It's written into the Act, so they need to, make progress.
Yeah.
But, so there's a lot, there's definitely potential for more work there in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we've spoken to sort of the various roles that you've played throughout your career, and I think looking at that and then also looking forward at the role of the actuary, what would be your kind of view of how the role of actuaries are changing in society as a whole?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think the frontier of actuarial application is growing think about like the expanding surface of a balloon. So, there's so many potential applications for not only the direct technical skills that you learn, but more importantly, I think the way of thinking that you're taught and the problem solving and the approach to understanding risk, thinking about mitigation, the whole actuarial control cycle, as cliche as it is an incredibly powerful tool, both in insurance application and in other fields, including general business. You see people doing actuarial study and then becoming entrepreneurs because it just equips you so well. Actuaries tend to be a little bit risk averse in general, as a sort of cliche, so that they aren't all natural entrepreneurs. I mean, the kind of, even here amongst the teams, so they probably out of the 100 people, you probably have maybe 60, maybe 65 actuarial people, and the range of skills, personality types, sort of tendencies for like super deep technical expertise versus that is only a background, and there's this very strong understanding of sort of the business environment or the commercial environment or the social environment, where those skills come to be. So I actually think you could take the skills almost anywhere.
Yeah,
just like engineers are famous for being good sort of COOs. I think actuaries are very well placed to play senior roles in any large organizations where there are uncertainties or risk, which is all organizations these days. I was beginning to talk with my hands. I think specifically in the traditional fields, I mean, there was a big fear, when I was studying, that computers will make actuaries obsolete, which obviously it hasn't. It's just made us, do better calculations, and so we're not using log tables and scraps of paper. And there's obviously a concern that AI will, heat the sort of that kind of work over time, and I think that's also wrong. I think that whether it's the computers as they exist now, or the internet, or AI, I think all of those are just tools, and actuaries will evolve their practice to be able to get better, to ask better questions and get better answers. And so that frontier is just broadening all the time rather than narrowing, in my opinion.